look at beautiful properties, they think themselves. There were some things that you talked about with the owner. I don't know, you could talk about the restaging, you could talk about the deal. What's most important to you that your future sellers and buyers know about how you crafted to make this deal happen?
So I think we want to break the misconception that these kind of high-end super luxury properties sell themselves, right? They clearly don't. They take somebody to kind of take charge of them like a captain of a ship. I don't know what the right analogy is, but no matter if it's an older home, a brand new construction property, little nuances like staging or things like that could be, clear to a seller that they need help with it, but they don't know they don't know how to hire the right person, I guess, is what it comes down to. And what's interesting is our clients never really care about our stats. They don't care how many record sales you have. Our clients don't care about if you sold the most expensive home in the neighborhood or the most expensive home in the county, but they expect you to be at the top of the game, like the number one, without ever saying you're number one. It's a weird kind of expectation from these clients. When you tell them, like, look, I have the record sales. Like, I got questioned. It's funny. I got questioned yesterday on like, hey, I think you're not putting enough value on my house, and I was like, I don't want to say I've single-handedly, but like our team is focused on raising the price points from $2,000 to $3,000 a square foot in this particular neighborhood. And we have the houses, and not only represented the seller, but represented the buyers. So we had to convince someone to come into Pelican Crest, for example, and pay $3,000 a square foot when homes are selling for $2,000 a square foot. So you almost initially want to think, hey, I got to say, how dare you, right? You're almost offending me. But that's a childish response. So you've got to act like an adult. You got to come back and say, well, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I could see why you would think that because I'm asking you for a price reduction on your house. But what I'm trying to educate you on is how every home is going to be valued differently. And that's where I think the expertise comes in, is really giving people the right advice for their specific home. Everybody thinks their house is the best house in the neighborhood. Everybody thinks I'm going to pull a stat to make my house more expensive and sell faster, but that's not how it works. I mean, little things like elevation changes, material selection, exact view profile, size of a backyard, and then it takes that particular buyer at that particular moment in time in the market to really justify spending that much, because we've been dealing with a decade of home appreciation. So every buyer's got to re-stomach. Imagine going to the mall and buying something, and you didn't buy it that day and you left and you went to go run an errand, you came back, it was 20% more for the same thing. The salesperson at the department store doesn't have to sell you the item. They have to sell you why it makes sense to spend 20% more on the same exact item that you just almost could have bought last time you were there. And that's really the psychological mountain that we have to get past. And that's really the difference with like today's agent, that when I was a kid, like the realtor that kind of opened the house up and offered you a bottle of water and a flyer and told you all about the neighborhood and just the schools. It's an interesting time to be a listing agent in a super luxury market in a high demand area, because there's a lot of information online. There's a ton of information, and we find that our clients, the buyers especially, not the sellers, they're obsessed shopping online before they step foot in any of these properties. They're staying up at night, they're looking on the different real estate sites, and they know the school district, they know the square footage, they know the lot size. They go back and look at the history. They a lot of times know as much as the listing agent does about the stats of the house. What they don't know is how the market movement is affecting their pricing analysis. What they don't know is they're using comps from 3 and 6 and 9 months ago to justify making an offer today. So the role of a listing agent has really changed dramatically. You're not supposed to be the data kind of analyst. You're not supposed to be dictating a bunch of stats to a homeowner. They know it already. That's why they're there. Our clients, I grew up in a certain neighborhood that, for example, I remember when we've had listings where I grew up in a place called Anaheim Hills. I went to private school there because my parents didn't like the public school option, and it doesn't have a great public school, but it's got a lot of great things why people want to live there. But I just remember being younger where people would move from all around these different neighborhoods, whether it was like Orange Park Acres, Villa Park, Anaheim Hills, Yorba Linda, Santa Ana Heights, Cowan Heights. And it was like, wow, people have a lot of choices when they want to live in this one area because the anchor isn't like an ocean view, a certain school district, a lifestyle, being close to Fashion Island, being walking distance to a beach. It was much more broad. When clients come into our neighborhoods here in coastal Orange County, they're like, I want to be on these 6 streets. And that's how specific they are. It's like someone going to buy for example, someone going to buy $1 million exotic vehicle, car, versus just a commuter car. I mean, their options are 10 times more. If you're talking about, I just want to buy EV 4-door sedan, right? And they're expensive. They're 60 to 150 grand now. But when someone's going to buy $1 million vehicle, they've been dream shopping for a while. They've been doing the research. So the salesperson is not going to sell them on what car to buy. They're going to sell them on, well, hey, you should maybe buy this color because you don't want to wait another 2 years for another one. And that's really kind of the intangible sales skill of why our clients, they don't know exactly why they're hiring us or rehiring us. They just know we get the job done, and they don't really care to know. But that's really the difference between a regular agent and a luxury agent or luxury broker. They're dealing with the currents at that particular time in the market, which it is like navigating a ship. It could be smooth waters, smooth sailing, and all of a sudden there's a storm hits. Well, guess what? Last week when we went online on great Google, if you typed in 30-year fixed mortgage rates, it said 8.633 on Google. I was like, oh, wow. I remember when I was in the mortgage business in the 90s and rates were that high. And what you have to do is then you got to go into Google, you got to say, hey, it's not a conventional loan, it's a jumbo loan, and put in the credit score, and it drops to like 7.5. But obviously the clickbait is like, oh my God, rates are 8.6, rates are 8, rates are 8, rates haven't been high since 2000s. I don't care who you are. If you're a cash buyer, you're home shopping, you're at a minimum thinking, I'm a more valuable buyer because I'm not using a loan, and all the people that are using loans are, they're out of the game. So my competition is thinned out. So I'm going to be more aggressive or maybe offer lower. We as the listing agents, the Daftarian Group's got to come in and say, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Home Buyer, I hate to break it to you. Everybody on that's going to come and see the house is a cash buyer. So I'm not trying to say you're not a valuable buyer. I'm just trying to make you understand either subliminally or literally that if you come in low, you're going to do more damage than good. And that's really the art of the deal. Like in this house that we're sitting in right now, 2889 Way Lane here in China Cove, basically as close to new construction as you can get without tearing the house down. It's got all the great designer finishes. It's staged to perfection. You got this 10 out of 10 view. It's just enchanting. It's emotional how amazing the view is. And then you think, okay, if I'm a friend of a seller or I'm the seller, I'm like, man, this is going to sell in a day, right? You're almost cocky about it. You're like, as I sit here right now, I'm looking at the views and I'm just like, who wouldn't want to live here? But there's 9 people in the ocean. There's a nuisance factor. There's a noise factor. There's not great parking. There's a lot of elevation changes. It's really a 3-bedroom house with a 4th room that's an office. The primary suite's on a totally different level than the guest bedrooms. And again, there's a lot of stairs. And even if you add an elevator or 2, there's still going to be stairs you got to deal with. And you've got privacy issues, and the beach isn't directly really that close, right? It's not like outside your backyard like on, let's say, Seashore Newport. So all these negatives come into play, and that's why hundreds of people came through this house. 39 open houses later, 4 or 5 private events, tens of thousands of dollars of digital print marketing led us to really just 5 written offers in this 5-month period, and 4 of the buyers that wrote offers were our own buyers. Now people want to ask, hey, are you just driving your own clients to the house? No, absolutely not. The people that weren't our own buyers, we couldn't speak directly to, so we couldn't sell them on all the benefits to outweigh any of the negatives, because it's foolish to think every house is perfect, because every house at any particular time has some positives and negatives about it. I don't care if you build it yourself. By the time you're done building it, you're going to find some flaws or things you don't like. And that's the funny part, is that people think these homes sell themselves. They don't. I hate to break it to you. No matter how great your house is, the buyer who you want to come and pay that top dollar price is going to find the flaws in it. It's human nature. They're going to say, I don't like that stone selection. Why does the hand railing look like this? Why'd they do this door system and not that door system? Why'd they do this AC unit system and why not that home automation system? It's just how the ultra wealthy operate. They're very picky. And to understand that, you've got to be kind of a intermediary, a therapist, if you will, a psychotherapist on the parties involved. And the interesting thing is on this house, to go back and think we got 5 offers and 4 were from our own buyers. And I'm talking offers in writing, not verbal offers. It's kind of mind-blowing to think that there's thousands of agents that work this part of, call it, Newport Beach. And the buyers they brought with this kind of incredible, this is a once in a lifetime view. I mean, every single time I'm in this house, I'm blown away by the view. It is not disappointed one time. I don't care what material object or thing anyone's purchased. It wears over time. I mean, I love my watch, right? But like when I had it for a week, I kind of like protected it. I didn't let it ding or hit anything. Now this thing clangs it's like a bracelet, and because you get used to it. Humans get used to things, good or bad, right? This house, you walk in there, you're like, yeah, it's the view. No way. The view it's not a 10 out of 10, it's a 20 out of 10. But it's not enough to sell a $15, $20 million house. And you've got to get somebody to find all these things that are maybe a negative as something that's a positive. Meaning like the people that bought the house, they think the people at Pirates Cove Beach here add life and energy to the property. They think all the elevation changes create a different setting for each part of the house. Their kids are moved out of the house. They're older, so they don't want them to live in the house full time. They want them to come back and stay for a little bit, but not create such an environment where they're like 30 and they're like, I'm going to move back to 2889 Way Lane with my parents. They like the primary suite on its own. It's got some privacy. And you know what? They go out to dinner and meet their friends a lot. They don't want to have 50, 100, 200 person parties. They're past that point in their life. So talk about, it's like a key fitting into a lock and opening it. It's all the little tumblers that have to click. And you got to have a little patience. You got to market. And the interesting thing was I was telling someone on our team that the person that's actually buying this house and that's going to close escrow here, in 4 days, they called us at 7:30 in the morning. When I say us, they called me on my cell phone. And the person, I knew who they were. They got our email marketing. Talk about a throwback, email marketing, right? They got an email blast that showcased the property with a little video attachment. And they said, you know what? I clicked and watched you talk about the house, and you seemed so emotional about the view and how incredible the house was. It kind of was a little contagious, and we weren't looking in that part of Corona Del Mar called China Cove, but it was so intriguing that I want to come and see the house. In fact, I want to come and see the house, and I want to come and see it by myself first, so I have kind of just a clear perspective on it. But I can only see it this morning around 9 in the morning. And I'm like, okay, the calendar is full. That's a helicopter.
Yeah. The airplanes you can get by with, helicopters.
Yeah, you're lucky it's not that busy. The noise can get a little much here. Where did I leave off? 9 in the morning.
9 in the morning.
Yeah.
And good.
So we asked to come and see the house at 9 in the morning. And I'm looking at the calendar and I'm like, okay, everybody on the team's full. Everyone's got appointments. I reach out to my co-listing agent, who happens to, by the way, live in the Corona Del Mar Village, walking distance from this house. And I told him, I said, hey, listen, I don't care what you have going on. I'm physically not in the area. Like, I won't be in the area till 10 a.m. I need you to get the house opened up, and then I'll show up towards the tail end of it. And he said, okay, great. I'll move things around. We opened up the house for the buyer. I came in towards the tail end. We had a conversation. He goes, listen, I love the house. I don't like it. I love it. I got to think about it, and then I'm going to bring my wife back. We said, okay. Next day, messages this late in the afternoon. I want to get in tomorrow morning again. Okay, no problem. We accommodated. We moved things around. We got him back in to see the house. Again, she said, I love it. I don't like it. So then we started talking. Long story short, we were able to kind of negotiate a deal because, of course, it's Murphy's Law. Right when they wanted to make an offer, there was another offer in on the property. So we had to kind of like make sure they understood that they need to spend a little bit more than their comfort zone to be able to get this house. And a lot of people are like, oh, are you getting buyers to pay more for homes? No, we're giving people advice so they can actually have the best shot of buying the property, because I can tell you, I can go back last year, 3 years ago, 5 years ago, and it's the same exact dinner party conversation. I can't believe I missed out on that house. Why didn't I agree to pay more? Why didn't I do the deal the way the seller wanted? Why did I let myself miss out on the house? I'm kicking myself. I can't tell you how many times I've heard that over the last decade. And it's not like, man, I really regret paying that extra 100 grand for the property. What a waste. I wish I could unwind the deal. Haven't heard that actually. And a lot of people are like, look, you make the money on the buy. Yes, when you're making an investment in real estate, that is, you basically make the money on the buy. When you're trying to buy your dream home, which is your reward to yourself for all your hard work, and at that moment in life, buying a property that's a lifestyle property, that's a want, not a need, part of that deal aspect needs to be put as a secondary kind of goal versus the primary objective. And that's what we did in this case. Not to say the buyers didn't agree with us, but they listened to our advice and they were able to get their offer accepted, go into escrow, and throughout this entire process, they keep on saying, we are so excited. We can't believe we get to live one day in this dream home. They're like giddy, like little kids going to their first day at Disneyland or something. I hate to break it to you, in your 40s, 50s, 60s and beyond, that little Disneyland first time feeling, that's hard to come by. And it seems like throughout this whole process, that's what we've been getting from these buyers. So that was the benefit of representing the seller and the buyer in this case. It wasn't that we got our buyer to overpay. We got him to pay the right price that we knew the sellers would accept, and to be able to beat out the other offer, at least, again, advice, there's no guarantees in life, but we gave them the best information so they could make the best decision, have the best chance of getting the house, because they would be devastated if they weren't buying this house. I mean, I don't know if they'll let us put them on video, but if they do, you're gonna see at a minimum a testimonial that says, if we wouldn't have been able to buy this house, we would have been devastated. That's the word they've used actually with us. And having the house fully staged with new furniture, being able to work with a company like Ambiance to be able to move things in and out of the house to kind of curate the move in is going to be like bring your toothbrush. It's all part of it. I remember when we first walked this house, it had partial staging and partial owned property that the seller had purchased for the home. And the interesting thing is a lot of agents would have been like, hey, let's just photograph and get it on the market now. I think the difference with having a lens of a lot of active experienced buyer deals, and meaning representing buyers, you get the perspective or at least the psychology of what buyers are looking for. And this is a beautiful, like new property. And we thought a little bit of the seller's furniture was too beachy and too beach cottagey and too, dare I say, shabby chic. It was beautiful stuff, but it was just the wrong look, and it kind of clashed a little bit with the transitional or contemporary staging furniture. So it was a tough conversation to say, hey, we know you just spent tens of thousands of dollars buying this furniture. We're going to ask you to store it, pack it, and basically, who knows what you're going to do with it at the end, but we're going to incur more costs and time to be able to make the house have one particular theme, which was this transitional, bit more modern vibe than that beachy vibe. Even though we're in a beach house, that's not what this is. This is kind of like that Malibu, contemporary metal roof, white walls, everything's kind of waterfall edge. I mean, it is transitional. It's not a true contemporary or all modern, but the furniture needs to have one essence. It needs to have one vibe to it, and it didn't. So those are little things that we did up front. Obviously, people might say, oh, did that really make a difference? Yeah, because I'll tell you why. When it came down, the buyer who bought the house ended up buying it furnished. And they didn't buy any of the seller's actual owned furniture that they were willing to sell at 50 cents on the dollar. So if that's not a case study, and look, it's nothing against the sellers. They're not in the furniture business. They're not interior designers, and they have great taste. But maybe the taste they have is different than the buyers. We're being paid to make the right advice and get it sent in a way to the seller that doesn't offend them. And that's really what we're great at. I mean, it's kind of slapping you with the white glove versus the bare hand. We don't want to make things sting so much where you're going to paralyze the seller from making a good decision up front. And that's really just an intangible of how to get a house set up right. A lot of people are like, staging doesn't work. I don't know. Every record sale that I see in the marketplace, unless you're getting dirt value, the houses look staged. They look move-in ready. They look as close to perfect as possible. So that's where sellers lack a little bit of empathy with buyers, which is the house should sell itself. Absolutely not true. Buyers should look past what's there. Absolutely not. The more you make a buyer use their imagination on what the house could be versus what it is, that equals discount in price. And that's not what the seller wants to hear when you're getting an offer. So it's those tough conversations in the beginning, having dozens and dozens of case studies of why staging worked on like properties. I mean, a lot of homes we've taken over, we've literally just changed staging, done some lighting, we've done some minor things to the house, maybe get rid of wallpaper, declutter, take down drapes, it changes the whole vibe of a property. I think what sellers don't understand is there's a way to live in a house and there's a way to sell a house. And we're not selling regular houses. We're selling luxury properties. They have to create an on-trend feel. If you're a buyer in today's market, you're paying too much for a house. It doesn't feel great. Just the whole lack of options, the disappointment of even missing out on some homes, dealing with multiple offers, and definitely feeling like you're paying more than you want to. If you've got those things, you've got to have compensating factors. I remember, going through the malls here and anywhere during COVID and after. There was lines. You had to make appointments to go overspend on things, luxury items. They would make it really unpleasant. I don't care if it was a watch, an outfit, clothing, a yacht. It didn't matter. All those things, vehicles. It was just like there were so many buyers, they didn't have to accommodate any of their needs. Well, now you go to the mall. I mean, we hosted a lunch with LVMH yesterday, and someone was there saying, hey, come to the store. We'll, bring you out Raynard Champagne and Dom Perignon and bring your clients. And some of that schmoozing or that buttering up is coming back because guess what? There isn't 50 people online to get the 2-3 items anymore. Things are kind of transitioning a little bit. Look, it's still a seller's market. There's still supply-demand issues. There's still not enough for everyone to go around. There's still a wait list of stuff, but it's not like it was 6 months or a year ago. I can assure you, that's the only transition we're seeing in the market, is that to get the same home sold might take a little bit longer. You might have to have more buyers come through. Even though they're cash buyers, they know rates are so high, there's not a lot of finance buyers coming in. In general, it's still a seller's market. The thing we're trying to tell sellers the most is that over the last several years, especially since COVID, every home had the same net effect, which was record price, sold for top dollar, and it sold like it was the trophy property in the neighborhood. Because guess what? There was almost zero chance the trophy property was going to come up because the person that owned the home wasn't going to sell it. So there was such major demand, such little inventory. It was a one-sided market, like 100 to 0. And now what we're seeing is, look, it's evening out a little bit. It's not a even or flat market, but the homes that need remodeling, that maybe don't have the best view, that have a little bit of nuisance like road noise or privacy issues, sellers are going to have to do the things to make the experience better for a buyer. That means make the house look like it's been renovated, maybe through staging, maybe clean it up a little bit, maybe do some upgrades before. And that's really where the expert advice on dealing with a team like the Daftarian Group is going to come in and be a clutch decision in the beginning, because how the property presents, you never get a chance at another first impression. We know that. So I think the most important thing is setting up a house for a level of success, because everybody's asking for more money than the last sale, but they don't realize they have to try a little bit harder or accommodate the buyer a little bit. Maybe they got to bring out the champagne before you ask them to spend the money on that particular item. And that hasn't been the case for the last 3 years. It's been, oh, you know what? You have to make me move to get me to sell my house. We're noticing that's changing. You're going to see inventory increase. You're going to see, when rates go down, more homes become available. Everyone's telling me, hey, when rates come down, home prices are going to shoot up again. Maybe in middle America, but in home price areas where you're talking about homes that are really driven by a lot of cash buyers right now, which is like that in our neighborhoods, the 7, 8, 9, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, $60 million homes, there's such little inventory to choose from, the home prices are still going up. So if rates drop, I think the opposite's going to happen. I think you're going to see more inventory hit because people are going to feel like I can sell and go buy something else because the other areas I'm looking at have more options, because that's one of the main reasons our clients are not selling their homes that they're not using or loving, because they just don't know, they don't have anything to trade out of into, they don't have anywhere to move to. Where they want, if they want to leave, let's say Corona Del Mar and go to, let's say Irvine Cove or Emerald Bay, there's not much for sale. And that's what lower rates are going to do in the future. You're going to see lower rates, you're going to see inventory percolate up, you're going to see more homes listed, more options. It's never good for a seller to give a buyer more options. Really, I'll tell you the key with this market over the last few years, the wait and see, or wait and see what else comes on the market mentality has been gone completely. I mean, extinguished. It's been all about fear of loss. It's been that FOMO buyer It's been the buyer who's like, if I don't make this offer on this house, I don't know if I'm going to get another one, and so I'm going to jump now. Do you know how many homes we've sold to people that said, hey, this home was not my first option. I missed out on my first, second, and third option, and this fourth option is the best I can get, and if I don't get that, I'm going to get nothing. So that's why it's been a one-sided seller's market.
You spoke recently about like why you think we're at the top of the market. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. Great reminder. That was one of the things I wanted to talk about today. Okay. What's going on?
Your hand was in front of it, now it's not.
Okay. Should we go?
Good.
So I've been working with homeowners and working, whether it was financing back in the 90s all the way to the 2000s, flipping homes, and then the last decade solely just working on luxury real estate for almost 30 years now. And what I can tell you is that the supply and demand component of selling a house has always been the dictating factor on the price, right? The less supply, the more demand, prices go up. The economy, recessions, all that thing, of course, all those matter. They're all different variables and they're all different at any given time. And there's been lots of cycles, but since really the Great Recession, home prices have just consistently gone up. And I've always told my clients, you always want to sell when there's the least amount of competing inventory. Right now, as I stand here, a couple days before Halloween in 2023, you've got to think the areas that most people want to live in coastal Orange County, has the lowest number of listings and competing homes than we've ever seen in our lifetime. And if you're a seller who's thinking about selling or doesn't love their property or does want to sell at the peak of the market, this could be the absolute best time. I mean, I wouldn't want to sell when there's more competing inventory, because it's not just giving the buyer more options, it's giving them hope that more homes will come on the market. So that wait and see mentality that's been gone and that was really extinguished and just blown out of the water completely post-COVID will come back. We're seeing it in some other markets already. And what I think really sellers don't really empathize with is how good we have it right now. If I wanted to sell the house that I have right now, I know I'm going to get multiple offers. I know I'm going to sell it quickly if I want to. But if you just go back, even to 2019, we were seeing homes sitting on the market for 3, 4, 5, 6 months. It's funny because we were taking on listings with 90-day listing agreements, knowing that we're going to sell them in a week. I was like, look, we don't even need a listing agreement. We'll just do one for 30 days because we know that we're going to sell like that. And with ease and with seller favorable terms, like a rent back. And hey, I don't want all my furniture. By the way, buy it all. The lighting that I paid for when I bought the house, I know you hate, buy that too. You know what? I don't want a rent back only. I want a 60-day escrow. Oh, I want you to comply with this term. I want you to do that. And it was like everything was on the seller's side and has been. And I think buyers, I don't want to call it bullied, but they definitely feel like they've been getting the short end of the stick. And at some point, when you see more inventory hit, it's going to be in their best interest to say, look, I'm going to wait because these aren't needs, they're wants. I'm sorry, my nose is itching the shit out of me. No. It's just something was like itching me.
Not needs, they're wants.
Yeah.
I like that what we were talking about, you're not giving them more options, you're giving them hope.
Yeah.
I think that's just a big piece of understanding what makes you different from an agent and becoming an advisor. And that's what we were talking about a little bit earlier about with, you were even talking about the team a lot, about being an advisor versus an agent. So maybe as we continue talking about, this is what makes us an agent, try to use the word advisor.
Okay.
When you're talking about Daptarian side of things. Some agents, but we come in as your advisor, right?
Okay.
So
we just cut that and
yeah.
maybe restart with the advisor thing?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's talk about, this is really, really good. We're both learning a lot right now.
Okay. All right, good. Perfect. If you're
This is
entertained.
really good. It's helping us learn how how your mind works and engage with the material, and how we can learn how to better get the material out of you.
Yeah. Because look, I want to always dispel the myth that we're chasing commissions. All we care about is, look, if a client came to me and said, hey, I'm going to sell today, or tell me what my benefit is of waiting and selling 5 years from now. If waiting 5 years is better for them, I'll wait 5 years. Like I'm talking, we played the long game, right? I want to, when I run into the person at Mastro's or at Javier's, I want them to see me get up and buy me a drink and like say, hey, thanks for the advice. Because it doesn't matter. We come from a place of abundance. Like we don't operate from a place of scarcity. We're not trying to get one particular sale. It affects our life almost zero, right? One sale. I mean, really, that's kind of the essence of all these videos, is to try to show people that we are their advisors. We're not trying to be their salesperson. We're not trying to be their agent, right? There's a lot of agents they can hire. That's why we kind of run and operate our own boutique brokerage, so we can kind of run our business the way we want, closer to like an advisory level than like a brokerage of just agents being forced to do deals. I don't know if that was caught on camera.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. Yeah. That's perfect. And this is exactly the type of stuff we want too. You were saying something earlier too about coming in and saying like, your house looks great, but we got to restage it. Like nobody wants to do that.
Yeah.
So maybe talk about that decision a little bit, not just how you came in and gave them the advisement to do it, but how you got a little bit of skin in the game to do it as well.
Yeah.
So talk to me about how you decided to restage 288 Way Lane.
Okay. So there's a funny story about the staging at 2889 Way Lane. As I mentioned earlier, the home is being purchased furnished, but it was set up when the buyer came in with like 70% staging, 30% owned furniture by the sellers. But luckily, that 30% owned furniture was in the garage, and the actual furniture that was all showcased in the property was all from the staging company Ambiance. And what they did was they curated the whole house with one look. They brought things in the beginning, and I'm going to take kind of a step back. When we took on the listing, we advised the sellers that we needed to get rid of their furniture that was in the house. That was brand new, by the way. It wasn't used. It wasn't like they were living in it. It was all brand new furniture. And we said, look, it doesn't have a cohesive look. So we're going to take that furniture, have to pay for movers to come and wrap it and store it in the garage. Luckily, the garage is big. It's an oversized 3-car, really kind of almost 3.5, 4-car garage, size-wise. And so there's a cost there. There's labor. There's a chance of maybe damaging this beautiful brand new house because everything's all white, and movers sometimes damage things, as we know. And then there's the cost of the new staging. So not only do you have to tell someone, hey, you made the wrong decision by buying this furniture that doesn't match exactly what the staging furniture is. And they might say, look, it's all just white and bright and light, right? But like the bed had like seashells on it, and it had really cute kind of beach vibes, right? And that's cool if this was a rental, which it was supposed to be at one point, but not for someone coming to spend $15 to $20 million on their modern, contemporary, transitional beach home. And that's really what we had to do. We had to say it without making them feel bad. And really what kind of made them understand how important it was to us was when the cost came back at like an additional 15 grand. And we said, hey, look, we believe in this so much, we're going to split it with you. So we'll cover $7,500. You guys pay $7,500. It's not about the money. It's about giving you the right advice. So we have the highest probability of achieving the result you want and we want. We're partners in this. Whether we're getting, 5% commission, 2.5% commission, 100% commission, doesn't matter. We're partners in this sale. That's how we approach every one of these listings. We're a minority partner, but we're a partner. And we want to do what's best for the house and for the seller. In this case, we also represented the buyer. So some people might say, hey, isn't that a conflict? Absolutely not. I mentioned this earlier. We only had 5 written offers on this house. I thought we'd have more just because it was listed for a little bit of time and it's such a unique, amazing property. But really, 4 of those 5 buyers came from our own buyer pool, our own VIP client list. And the person buying the house is our own client. They've been our client for a while. And it's interesting that more agents couldn't sell this property to their own buyers with such a shortage of oceanfront. We are front row, by the way. But getting back to the staging, the skin in the game is just there as a gesture, right? When you're selling these homes where the commissions are hundreds of thousands of dollars, people don't realize we might spend $20,000 to $40,000 just on marketing on the house. We might spend another $10,000, $20,000 on miscellaneous staging events. We threw so many just private curated events to bring the right type of people to this property, because many people have never been in China Cove and Corona Del Mar, let alone look at buying a home with a beach next to it, obviously tourists, lack of parking, things like that you're going to have to overcome by making sure you find the buyer who actually loves every bit of the house. And that's really kind of what having that skin in the game is. It's not like, oh, we want to incur expenses and show a multimillionaire or big time seller that we're going to pay a tiny little bit, because their carrying costs, their taxes, sometimes if there's a mortgage, outweighs any bit of money we're going to spend. But it's just a gesture to explain we are your partner. We're not just your agent, we're your advisor, and we're going to have some skin in the game. So I think those kind of little gestures help sellers understand that what you're telling them is not just for them to carry all the skin in the game, for them to incur all the cost. It's really kind of in line with what we're saying, which is we're going to show you that we're your partner as well. And that is unique. Other companies come and lead with, let me be your listing agent by paying for your staging. I mean, I think that can be done in some houses, but it's a loss leader that a lot of people that do that, are going out there and try to be discount brokers. They're not going to have enough ammunition or firepower with their budgets to market the homes right, have the right staff involved, have the right team involved so the house can get the maximum exposure. I mean, you're really hiring an agent these days to do all the regular listing agent duties, but you've got to increase the marketing exposure as the market softens just a bit or shifts, really. You've got to have a team to support you, because sellers want us, and I want you to pay attention to this. Sellers want us to have the major market share in that particular time in our marketplace, whether it's Corona Del Mar, Newport Coast, Crystal Cove, Laguna, the other side of the bay in Newport, Shady Canyon. It doesn't matter. They want you to be the dominant agent. So that means you have to have a lot of listings. But then they want you to treat their listing as if it's your only listing. And the only way you can do that is if you have a trained expert team to kind of replicate your process, with you kind of being there in many places by delegating things and kind of training your right team. Well, of course, look, you got to put people on payroll. You got to pay them. You can't come in there and take listings on for 1% and expect this kind of amazing outcome where someone goes into one of our open houses and says, hey, I don't like this particular house. What else do you have for me? And we tell them, hey, listen, go check out 2889 Way Lane. I know you're not looking oceanfront or bluff front, but you got to check this house out. And that's how you're able to leverage your market share. There's no amount of marketing, print ads, digital ads, that's going to create the exposure of having, let's say, 5 open houses in a particular little geographic area. You're running into buyers over and over again. And that's what sellers are paying us to do, is interact with buyers, influence buyers, expose their property. That's step one, really, once we go live with a listing. Going back to the staging and the skin in the game, look, for us, we want to just do what's best for our clients. I didn't like where that was headed. We're going to unwind and kind of restart. Let's go back to you had the advisors.
You're starting to talk to almost agents a little bit.
Yeah, I didn't like any of that. Whatever. We'll scrap and restart. Let's talk. I liked where you brought up the advisors versus agents.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
I like the bit about this bit about the restaging. I think what the elegance in that as an advisor is you came in and told them that they were doing something wrong. Right?
Yeah.
It's harsh to say it that way, but you told them they needed to do something different, put it that way.
Yeah.
You told them they needed to pivot. But the thing that I liked the best that you said was that it was giving you used the right advice at the right time a lot, and I would love to weave that into what we do. And you said it was the right advice that gave, is the furniture going to sell the house? No. But it's the right advice with the highest probability to get what you want.
Yeah.
And I think that is the nuance at this level, is that it's not a one shot. We're at all places at all times to bring you the buyers, but also we're going to help you position the home with the highest probability to get the outcome you want, and then we're going to exceed your expectation.
Yeah. Okay. So how do I start that?
So I think that we're just telling the story from a lot of different angles, and we're going to piece it together.
Okay.
So let's say, the gorgeous piece of property, 288 Way Lane. We're looking out at arguably the best view in Orange County, and yet some buyer might find a difficulty in purchasing this property simply because of the way it was staged. So
Yeah.
It's an easy fix, even though it incurred a cost. and we decided to take on some of that cost because we
Yeah.
believe we are a partner and we are invited, but we're also a partner. Try it that way.
Okay.
So we came into 288 Lane, arguably the best view.
Okay, so I got it.
Obviously,
Yeah,
we need-
yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting at 2889 Way Lane in Corona Del Mar, China Cove to be exact, in Corona Del Mar, and I have to say this is one of the best view properties anywhere in the coast, maybe the world, but definitely the coast here in Orange County. And as much as the view is really dramatic and emotional and tugs and pulls on so many senses that you just want to be here, some buyers, when we walked into the house, thought they might have difficulty with the house kind of in it, the way it presents and some of the staging or the way the furniture was kind of laid out. So we had a tough conversation with the owner and saying, look, you bought all this beautiful furniture and you hired the best stager in town to be able to bring in their furniture, but it's a little bit of a mashup that didn't work in our opinion. It's a little bit of a hybrid that we had to unwind. And that was a tough conversation because there was a lot of time, energy, and money. This was a 6-year project for the sellers. It started out supposed to be a couple years, but it stretched out to 6 years. COVID played a big part of that. But the bottom line is there was a lot of agony and pain at the end. We find this over and over and over again with our clients, especially in new construction or remodels. It always took longer than they thought. They spent more money than they wanted, and they're kind of at that point of burnout. And when people are stressed or burnt out, they don't think clearly. And we come in and say, listen, we understand you're at the end of your rope. You don't want to do a single thing. You don't want to lift your finger anymore because you've done more than you ever thought you would, and you're at that burnout phase. We come in and say, listen, it's better to spend a little bit more time and a little bit more money to really get the house to that point of having the highest probability of the best outcome, because you don't want to go to market and sit on the market for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months and then not be able to then at that point justify. You're not going to pull the house off the market and then do that one little thing, whether it's a restage or finish that bathroom. You know, I remember I was flipping a home in 2014, and we decided to remodel all the bathrooms except the primary bathroom. And really it was because the primary bathroom had been renovated, but like 5 years before, and the rest of the house was all original. And in order to save time, not really the cost, because if we were going to remodel the primary bathroom, we were going to move some walls and stuff because it was a little bit choppy. It didn't make sense. So we did, and we thought, okay, hey, look, it'll work. I remember that particular house, dozens of people walked through it, and all they would talk about is how dare us not remodel the primary bathroom. And it was the house that didn't have the remodeled bathroom. There were so many other great things about it, but it ended up getting this scarlet letter or like a stigma over not remodeling the primary bathroom. And I remember that sting and that burn of like the additional 4 months it took to sell the house back then, and the money we probably left on the table by not making the right decision and taking the easy route. Because listen, when you're fatigued and you're exhausted emotionally and sometimes financially on a budget for that particular property, you don't make the right decision. That's really where a good advisor comes in, right? It's like, why do you hire a personal trainer? Well, accountability, a roadmap, really, but it's to get out that last 1 or 2 reps at the trainer. Because if you're working with your buddy or by yourself, you kind of just quit right before you should. And that's really the analogy I can give you that best suits kind of our advice at the Daftarian Group is we come in and say, look, we've had a lot of experiences at this exact point. You've gone to this moment and you're looking at it from your lens in a very kind of myopic moment in time that only is affecting you. And you're like, forget it. If they can't see the vision, they shouldn't buy the house. That's not what you're going to say weeks or months later when the house isn't getting the offers you want. So we can come in, and I got to say, just years of dealing with clients, I think there's a skill in being able to communicate a thought or a bit of advice to a client without offending them, and them getting the sense that you've been there as well. So there's not just rapport building, but that relatability of, listen, here's 3, 4 examples of like other houses that either me or another one of our sellers did what you're about to do and they regretted it. And we don't want to have that regret at the tail end of the transaction. We want to give you the right advice and give it to you at that right particular time in the moment. Well, we're not going to cause you any more damage, but really help you. And it's like that trainer analogy that I just gave you. It's the best bit of advice at that moment that you don't want to do on your own. And that's really what you need, that advisor, that assistance. You know, a lot of our clients, they all have one thing in common. They did something really well in business or in life, and they've amassed a bit of wealth, and they're at that luxury kind of point in their lives or that marketplace, and they go against what other people say all the time in their business life, and they do what their gut tells them, and they get rewarded by being right. And they do things in life in the business world, maybe bet on a stock or bet on a team or a strategy or a certain path in their own business that the other people aren't doing, and or their competitors, and they end up winning big, and they're able to afford these like 5, 10, 20, 30, 40 million dollar homes. And they take that same mindset into selling a luxury property. And unfortunately, it doesn't work, because look, if the developers and the top record sales are following a formula of, let's say, staging, for example, or doing things for the house that, I remember we sold a house recently in Pelican Crest, and the owner just didn't want to deal with the time frame on putting a pool in the backyard. It had an indoor pool, and it was an amazing house, but I kept on telling the owner, I was like, listen, it's going to be like running up a hill with a 100-pound weight on our back versus with no weight. We still got to get up the hill, and it's not easy, but why add more weights in the backpack? Not adding the pool, I know you're going to spend an extra 3-4 months, getting the permit, doing the pool, and there's going to be some extra cost, but people that are buying 10, 11,000 square foot custom homes in that particular neighborhood want a pool. I was like, look, go to Google Earth. Every house has a pool. It's not just my advice, but you know what? I was dealing with a very seasoned, very smart developer, and their gut was like, look, the pool is there in the inside. An indoor pool is like a unicorn situation. And I reminded him, I said, look, this property is in Newport Coast, California. It's not in Boston. It's not in New York. It's not on the East Coast. It's not in Rhode Island. It doesn't get that cold. People prefer to be outside in the pool. If you have the indoor pool, it's got to be an extra, not the only pool. And I bring that up kind of jokingly because it ended up, we did a lot of the showings where I was there, the vast majority, and I heard over and over again, where's the pool? Why isn't there a pool? We said, look, we have a pool bid. Here's a bid from a reputable pool builder. This is how much it'll cost. This is how the permit process will work. And they're like, look, I don't see it. Where's the pool going to go? It's going to take up the whole backyard. And I was just scratching my head saying, God, why didn't this particular seller not listen to us? Because we were involved from when he bought the home, during the remodel. I mean, we probably went to the house 100 times before it was completed. That's how involved we were. And we made advice on materials and certain selections. And really, what's funny, we don't come in there and go, oh, we're not designers, right? We're not telling you how to do the whole house, even though we could. What we're telling you is, hey, stop, don't make that mistake. And that's really the invaluable kind of expertise and advice that we can come in and say, we're not making you say, hey, instead of like floating the TV and putting like this particular fireplace, move it somewhere else. No, what we're saying is don't put that weird green stone on the wall, because even though you love it, and when you proposed to your spouse in Brazil, there was this Brazilian quartzite in this hotel lobby, no one else had that experience but you. So why are you trying to make people live life through your lens when you're trying to get them to buy the house and see themselves in the house? When you make a house kind of neutral and let the house sell itself, you're letting the buyer's mind go to a place of imagining them enjoying the house. That's their mind saying, I want to live and occupy this space, not with a unique Brazilian quartzite that has tree branches looking in it. Again, I might love it, I might hate it. I don't want to have such an emotional decision have to be made at a showing. And that's what maybe going with something more neutral, like a, Calcutta marble or some beautiful type of high-end porcelain or quartzite that's maybe more neutral, right? You're going to want to make 99% of the people happy, not 50%. You don't want to have people be kind of making decisions on whether they love or hate something in a house. And some people say, hey, it's a piece of art. Well, great. Okay. You know what? Art sometimes doesn't sell, right? And art is subjective. People are asking us to price properties, tell them how long it's going to sell, predict the future. We need reliability. And things that don't offend or make people love or hate, that's really kind of what these homes are like. Sometimes people are like, hey, you know what, that house was too basic, right? Or it didn't have enough wow factor. And that's really the art part of this interior design game in these homes. We're not trying to make the house some cutting edge, super unique one-off property. Let the location and the size and the lack of competing inventory do that for you. What we're trying to do is make the house neutral, at least with the furniture, lighting fixtures. I walked into a house the other day, they had fake deer antlers on a dining room chandelier. I said, listen, what if the person buying the house, one of the spouses are a vegan, right? You don't want to have the deer antlers in the dining room chandelier. What's wrong with just a circular chandelier that you'd find on one of the sites, whether it's Restoration Hardware, one of these other lighting companies, where it's a little bit more mass appeal, right? Especially in that particular price point. It's like when you walk into boutiques of really high-end department stores, or you walk into, let's say, Prada or Louis Vuitton or Van Cleef, you don't have crazy things on the walls because the item itself is supposed to be the jewelry. The clothing, the jewelry themselves, that's supposed to be the wow factor and the pop. When you walk into a house like the one I'm in right now, the view is the pop, right? You don't need crazy, out of this world, like, again, nothing against Roche Bobois or some of those types of, that type of furniture. It's so eclectic, it's so unique, it's gonna get too much attention. I look at attention as like a percentage point. When we walk through a house, I want 100% of your attention on the view. I don't want 100% of your attention on some weird piece of art that has like near nudity going on, right? You walk into a house, I was walking a house in Corona Del Mar last week, and there was a complete exposed breast of a woman in a piece of art in the master bedroom or the primary suite. And what I thought to myself was, this is gonna offend some people. And I happen to be with a very conservative couple, and of course, right when we walked in the primary suite, one of the parties that were there were like, wow, this is a really offensive piece of art. And I said, yeah, but go ahead and look at the view. The art can be removed. If I have to explain that to someone, I don't want their brain to kind of stamp on that part of the house that I was offended or that I didn't like something. I also showed a house a couple weeks ago, and the person had super risque pictures of their wife in the house. I mean, basically burlesque and lingerie, but not in the bedroom only, throughout the whole property. And I thought to myself, wow, what a beautiful couple. They must both work out a lot and eat well and take care of themselves. And my clients I was with kept on saying, wow, this is pretty crazy how risque these photos are. This is super weird. We went in the office, near naked photo. Went in the hallway, near naked photo. Went in the primary suite, near naked photo. I was like, when I got the question from the listing agent, what's the feedback on the showing? I said, they thought the photos were a little too much. And they go, what about the house? I said, I don't think they got past the photos. That's kind of what they left with. And it's funny, we're laughing about it, but you're not doing yourself any favors. Again, if you're in a race with other people, and it's a race, it's a relay race, right? You don't just tie weights to yourself for no reason, right? You want to give yourself as best a competitive advantage as possible and not weigh yourself down. And those little types of things where people end up being a little bit tone deaf or a little bit insensitive to what buyers want is really where we come in and give the right advice. And it's not just saying it. Anyone can come in and say, hey, these are all the things that are wrong with the house or where the rooms of improvement are. What we do is we say, listen, we assess what kind of type of personality we're dealing with. We learn how to speak their language a bit, and we communicate in a way where they'll kind of go, you know what? I'm not going to get offended. I'm going to have an open mind to this. And that's the best kind of partnership. Look, some people are eccentric, and some people are a bit crazy. We specialize in those kind of people, by the way. But all jokes aside.
Can I pause you?
Yeah.
Change your battery.
Okay, all right. And I got to go.
You get like all the other properties.
Okay, we'll talk about it.
Rising tide raises all ships.
Yeah. It's like, how does all this lint just get on me? This is a really uncomfortable way to sit to, by the way, but it's okay.
But you look good.
You look good.
All right, what's the last bit you want to talk about here? You want to talk about the seller?
Yeah, like let's identify what type of seller you are. Are you a person that wants to sell with the least amount of headache and get the highest price? I mean, obviously that's most everybody, right? So, okay.
You want to talk about...
Why don't you, I'm going to start talking about, I'm just going to intro by saying a lot of clients are asking me, what's the best time to sell? Right now. Right now is the best time to sell. And I'll tell you why. So, if we can just start, give me a go.
Yep.
Yeah. Where are you going?
So the question I get asked more now, I say than ever, is when's the best time to sell? Well, if you've got, for example, one of my clients is like, my kid's going to graduate high school in 2 years. We don't want to move. Well, for them, it's 2 years, right? For many of our clients, the best time to sell is when they can sell for the highest price and the least amount of headache. Because a lot of my clients, a lot of the clients in general, their lives are so busy, they have so many things going on, they don't want to deal with a 3, 6, 9 month listing. They don't want to deal with like multiple showings, lots of open houses, unknown kind of reality of what's next. They don't like that uncertainty. They want something to happen quickly, and they want to obviously get the highest price. So for those type of people, when is the best time to sell? Right now. And I'll tell you why. There's 2 reasons. The normal answer by any agent is there's no inventory. So supply's low, demand's still high, you can sell for a big number. In these little micro markets, like let's talk about Newport Beach. Within Newport Beach, you have a city called Newport Coast. Within Newport Coast, you have a small community called Coastal Canyon. And in Coastal Canyon, there's about 100 homes, give or take. And we have a listing in there at 6 Dolomiti. And we sold the client this house, advised on the remodel, brought in the staging, stopped the person from making lots of different what we felt would have been mistakes or errors, really advised and guided them through the remodel process that took about 14 or 15 months, came up with some concepts to add square footage, gave them all the list of subs and vendors, really kind of acted as their advisor through the whole process. They were, of course, never going to sell the house, called us a few months ago and said, hey, we're going to sell the house. We ended up saying we're going to list the house for $7,995,000. When we were about to list the house, the most expensive home ever to sell in the neighborhood was in the $6 million range. So this was a big jump. You're talking 20, 30% jump from the home prices just a few months earlier. Right when we were getting to list, one of the trophy properties in this neighborhood, which was the former model, sold off market for $7.1 million. And our property didn't have that view, but it was renovated and it looked very turnkey because the neighborhood's about 15, 16 years old. So we said, look, this is the right time to go at this price. And we felt very confident we were going to get close to list price. In a matter of a week, we had multiple interested parties. We were able to find and select the buyer who was willing to pay all cash, had no appraisal contingency, no loan contingency, and basically removed all their contingencies in less than 10 days. And they're closing this coming week for $7,950,000. And so by the time you watch the video, it'll be closed. The address again is 6 Dolomiti in Newport Coast. Now, why is this address so important? A lot of people might think, well, it's just another big record sale. And who cares? It'll be a stat. I could use it now or later when I decide to sell my house or not, right? It's really up to me. And I'm here to tell you that's not the case. And here's why. If you have a original condition property that didn't require the same, call it $700,000, $1 million of what our client spent on their remodel, you could have probably sold your house before this listing for about $6.5 million. Now you could probably sell it for $7 million approximately. So what does that mean? The net effect is for the original condition properties that normally would have had to have undergone, let's say, $1 million remodel, all that headache, all that time, you don't have to do that, and you're probably going to get $500,000 more in your pocket. Well, again, you got taxes and things, but I'm talking gross, right? A higher sales price of about $500,000 if you were to come and list right after the sale of 6 Dolomiti. Now, here, this is where I need you to pay attention. If too much time passes and the little sizzle and kind of attention that 6 Dolomiti is getting is going to fizzle out, and let's say a couple other properties listed in the neighborhood and they're not as nice as 6 Dolomiti, meaning fully renovated, then maybe you're going to get closer back to that under $7 million or $6.5 million sales price for your original condition property. So what we've done inorganically or by force is bring a new comp in the neighborhood, raise the prices so high that the other homes that are not as renovated or maybe not as nice are going to be able to get dragged up or pulled up in price by that new comp. And there's a strike price that has to be executed at a certain time frame. And what I mean by that is close to this house closing. So if you could snap your fingers and list your house the week this sale closes, then people will say, you know what? This house sold for almost $8 million. They're asking 7 or 7.25. That sounds about right. Whereas before this sale, we're talking literally just a few weeks ago, if you were to list an original condition home in that neighborhood for about 7 or 7.25 million, people would laugh at you. They wouldn't even come and see the house. They would say it's grossly overpriced. But we shifted the whole view and the whole pricing analysis of one particular neighborhood with one sale. Across the street, literally across the street, there's a community called Ocean Heights. It's a tract home neighborhood, meaning they're built by builders, they're non-custom homes. We listed a house in there, it's listed for about $11,850,000. It's 2 Via Rubino. Again, we worked a long time to be able to represent these types of properties, but it has one of the best views in the neighborhood. It's on a corner lot. It was not newly renovated, but it's a trophy lot, trophy view, and larger square footage. It's going to close on Tuesday for $11.1 million. Now, excluding Crystal Cove, talking just Newport Coast here, it's going to be the highest price sale of any tract home ever to sell in Newport Coast. Now, again, my arm hair sticks up straight because I remember going through these neighborhoods a decade or 15 or 20 years ago, and I was just seeing prices with a 1 in front of them. In this neighborhood, my friends and parents of my friends bought for 1.7, 1.9, 1.3, 2.2 million when these homes were first built. And to be able to literally just, you're talking 20 years later, let's call it, sell one for $11.1 million when the neighborhood just a few months ago was selling for 6, 7, and the highest sale in there was about 8.5 million. To sell in that same time frame, same season, for 11.1 million is massive. And what that does is you break a whole new threshold in price, and now it kind of drags up all the other prices for all the other properties. Now, again, I'm not here to get a pat on the back or maybe just a high five on the street or send me a drink when you see me at Javier's or Mastro's. But the point is, it was hard work. Most buyers didn't want to pay the price. We found the buyer that was willing to, again, buy with no appraisal contingency because the property wouldn't have appraised, no loan contingency because we were looking for an all-cash buyer who wasn't going to use rates or kind of things fluctuating or the inability to get a loan to back out. We found a good buyer, and we structured a deal, and they even kind of delayed closing a little bit because they had things kind of hiccups in their deal. We kept the whole deal together to be able to close, and it's going to be a massive record sale that the whole neighborhood's going to benefit from, and not just that particular neighborhood, all the tract homes and a lot of the homes all in Newport Coast. It's going to set and raise and reset, the pricing for that particular neighborhood. If you let too much time pass and you come to market and home prices don't continually to go up, then you're going to miss the window to sell what might be a home that the view's not as good. Because look, it's going to be hard to replicate this particular property with its view, with its corner lot, with its size of its lot. And what I want to stress to certain sellers is that we're not trying to list your house today. If a client told me, hey, is it better for me to list today or 5 years from now? And literally, it's better to list 5 years from now for them. We're in the long game. We're not trying to sell your house today. We're trying to do what's best for you. And a lot of our sellers don't really realize what's best for them. They think the market is always going to be on their side. We've been so spoiled for over a decade straight of home prices just going up that we don't even know what a normal market feels like when it comes to being a seller. And I can tell you that things don't last forever. And there's always a bit of calculated risk in any time you want to sell your house. And for somebody who doesn't want to stomach the turbulence or the waves or the roller coaster of a normal market or a less than perfect seller's market, right now is the time to sell. If you want to sell for a record price with ease, right now is the time to sell. If you don't want to remodel your whole property to make it look like a brand new tract home or one of these brand new Toll Brothers or New Home Company properties that everybody seems to want, but they don't sell them in our neighborhoods because the communities in coastal Orange County are not brand new, so you got to deal with one-off remodels. If you don't want to stomach the remodel and still get the remodeled price, right now is the time to sell. Most of your agents or advisors are not going to tell you that. They're going to say, well, it's holiday, it's probably not a good time to sell. Well, incorrect at this particular time in the year because there's no inventory. You want to sell when there's less competitors in the listing pool. Number two, you've got a lot of cash buyers right now, some local, some coming from overseas. You don't know if that's going to be guaranteed, right? There's no guarantees with any of this. So you want to strike while there's a bit of predictability. And the third component is all these new record sales. I mean, as I sit here, right now at this property at 2889 Way Lane, this is going to be the highest price home to ever sell in China Cove. The listing I mentioned at 2 Via Rubino, highest price tract home ever to sell in Newport Coast, excluding Crystal Cove. 6 Dolomiti, highest price sale ever in Coastal Canyon. That's just things we're closing next week, right? Homes we've just recently sold. Like, for example, the highest price sale in Orange County on record on the MLS this year is One Shore Ridge for $34 million. We represented the seller and the buyer. So there's a bit, and by the way, it also closed for over 3,000 a square foot, which was incredible for Pelican Crest. Those are Crystal Cove prices. So we debunked the myth that you can't get over 3,000 a square foot in Pelican Crest or Pelican Hill or one of the Newport Coast neighborhoods, right? And at the same time, a home just sold for $4,300 a square foot in Crystal Cove on Front Row and Del Mar. Now, why are all these stats so important? Because it's what shapes up the confidence of a buyer to go in and pay that price on maybe a home that isn't perfect or isn't brand new or doesn't have the best location. And so if these A properties are raising the bar up so high, you've got a window to act to maybe sell the property. And I never want to classify homes as better or worse or, not as good. But the reality is, the harsh truth is some lots have better views than others. Some homes are newer than others. So you've got to classify them in certain grades. And right now, a B and C property is getting the A price. And even if they're not getting the A price, they're getting the A plus treatment, which is selling quickly, multiple offers, terms that are favorable for a seller, like a rent back or a longer escrow, so you can find another house. And these are things that we've just been accustomed to that I promise you will not last forever. And that's really, to be a little bit longer-winded than I wanted to be, but the point is that we can't take this market for granted. It's not going to be a one-sided seller's market forever, and your property might not be the trophy property. It might not have the best view. It might not have the biggest yard. It might not have all the brand new finishes. And if it doesn't, this is a better time to sell maybe the next year when there's going to be more options because people will pass on your property. We're seeing it happen right now. There's more customs hitting the market across the coast here. It's giving buyers more options. Prices aren't falling, but buyers are telling us while we're in showings, none of those homes were perfect. We're going to wait and see what else the market has to give us with more listings. That kind of wait and see mentality is what we don't want. We don't want buyers to have a false sense of hope that magical properties are going to hit the market. We want them to make decisions on what's available now, and that's what we've been dealing with. Buyers are buying what's available now. They have been waiting for things to come on the market because there's been so few homes and prices have been going up. If they feel prices are going to flatten due to higher rates or a lesser than perfect economy, then they'll wait. And we don't want a wait and see mentality. We want fear of loss. We want people to, and listen, it's better for the buyers too. In most cases, they can start enjoying the house. I can't tell you how many buyers have been either priced out or have no inventory to choose from. And they say, I wish I would have bought that house. So again, it's better for the buyer to buy now. It's better for the seller to list now. You don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. And that's the harsh reality. And we've been spoiled. And obviously the market's going to teach us that it's not always going to be one way. So what we want to do is meet with our clients, give them an assessment of the pros and cons of listing today versus listing tomorrow, what their other options are. I mean, we just listed a property and we had the seller in an escrow off market that they didn't know about, obviously until they came to us. So they listed with the intention knowing that we already have a replacement property. Those are things that we're doing for our clients right now to kind of navigate through today's market that really kind of gets us to the level of advisor status versus just, hey, this is what's on the market today. So, sorry, I gassed out on that one. I got to run.
You do gotta run.
Okay.
Well, that's good.
Okay.